Imagine you work in a local government accounting department in the 1930s or 40s. It's a very different time, and not just because doctors had just started using penicillin and Hawaii and Alaska aren't states yet. Your work in the accounting department is very different from now, primarily because there are absolutely no computers. You're doing paper-based clerking work all day, filling out receipts, handwriting invoices, or maybe if you're an accountant, you're reconciling accounts by hand. It's so much math. And no matter what, everything is an extremely time-consuming and manual process that is prone to errors, miscalculations, and constantly under threat from over-aggressively erasing and bleeding fountain pens. So now think what happens over the next few decades. Research through the 50s and 60s brings down the size and price of computers to the point that these futuristic machines become accessible to large organizations. Cities began purchasing their first mainframe general ledger computers for their accounting operations in the late 60s and through the 70s, transferring those arduous manual calculations little by little into electronic bits that calculated faster and more accurately than humans ever could. In the 1980s, personal computers exploded onto the scene, and one by one, other city departments began to adopt computers. Say a purchasing department transitions to a computerized purchase order system. A code administration department transitions to a computerized permitting system. A human resources department transitions to a computerized personnel system. By the time the 90s roll around, cities from across the country are operating dozens of standalone software systems, all of them siloed, and none of them can communicate with one another. And what's the problem with that? Well, imagine your city council wants to know how much revenue comes in from building permits. The information on the number of permits is in the permitting system, but the information on the payments for permits is in the Treasury receivable system. So, to answer this question, you'd have to pull information out of each system and then manually stitch it together. What if the budget office wanted to use the current salaries of each employee, a city's single biggest expenditure, as the starting point for building the city's annual budget? Well, they'd have to pull information out of the HR system, manually enter it into their budget system, and then after the budget is approved by City Council, provide the completed budget to the Finance Department to manually enter it into the General Ledger system. The first phase of computerization eliminated many time-consuming, error-prone manual processes, but it also created many new ones. And this is where enterprise resource planning systems, what many people refer to as ERPs, come in. As more and more local government operations computerized, it soon became clear that the ability to freely and quickly and accurately share data between systems would separate organizations that took full advantage of the promise of computerization and those that simply traded one manual process for another. An ERP is a suite of software, an ecosystem, where instead of several standalone systems for, say, the general ledger, purchasing, human resources, you have one system with multiple modules for each of these uses. In this system, all data are shared, and an end user can follow an invoice through to a vendor, to a contract, to a specific check. You can follow an individual employee to their approved position, to the amount the budget office budgeted for that position. Placing all of this related information in context like this enables organizations to make better, more effective decisions more quickly. So here at the city, our ERP software is called Munis, which is made by a company called Tyler Technologies, and we turned it on in 2013. There are three sides to our instance of Munis: financials, budget, and human resources. The largest and most complex of these three is the financials, which includes the general ledger, invoice payments, purchase order requisitions and change orders, contracts, bids, vendor self-service, employee self-service, and many other functionalities. Munis Financials handles more than 75,000 paychecks a year, more than 64,000 invoices, 3,000 fixed assets, and more than $1.6 billion in monetary and capital assets. And all of this is integrated with the annual budget process and ongoing personnel management modules of Munis that OMB and the HR department operate respectively. So if you'd like to get started with Munis Financials, check out our video series on the chart of accounts. We'll see you then.